Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hauser Wirth. I'm Russell Salmon, Director of Public Programs here. So happy you're all here today, this afternoon, for this beautiful moment of poetry, prose, and performance in conjunction with Enuma Okoro's beautiful show at our 22nd Street Gallery, The Flesh of the Earth. And I know some of you went over there thinking this was happening there, so thank you for coming over here. We're very happy to have you. Just in case you haven't seen the exhibition, it will be on view until 6 p.m. tonight, so you'll have about an hour to run over there, or as it runs, which will close on the 6th of April. We're so excited for today's program, which will feature readings of poems by Ama Codjoe, read by poet Maya Marshall, 2 selections of prose, chosen and read by Enuma Okoro, and concluding with a performance by Adama Delphine Fawundu and her son Shea Buford. I hope you also enjoyed Adama's film Cosmic Echoes, which was playing as you entered and is also a key component of the exhibition at the gallery. I just want to say a quick thank you to Enuma for her beautiful collaboration on this program today. And also to my amazing colleagues, Sally Hughes, Adrian Chow, Carolina Sabater, and Angelique Owens, all of whom made this afternoon possible. And with that, thank you again for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. And now please join me in welcoming Maya Marshall to the stage for our first reading.
Hello, friends. Easy enough to hear me? Okay, good. Yes, thank you, little tiny voice. Thank you, Enuma, for making this show, and Russell for that lovely introduction, and Ama for inviting me to read from your book. She's not here, but this is her book. Ooh. Blueprint. As I lay on the prickly grass, grasshoppers chattered in my hair. I stroked the ground like a beard. No one sang. The whole sky was watching. It's animal piss and the dye pot that makes indigo blue. Blue seeped out of me. But I wanted to forge it myself. I was obsessed with making. The yellow leaves browned, the sugar pine needles refused to shed. I couldn't get the pigment right, it kept turning to mud. I had attempted this before, making wine from another's body. Stamping and stomping my grape-stained feet. When I rose, I left the print of a woman behind. I noticed the pear tree, how it gave without question. I asked anyway, was asking again, collecting broken seashells and tiny elephant figurines. I needed a herd of blue. I soaked black beans for the color they left. My blue was a habit, a kind of river I stepped into, sometimes crossed. Because it held the sky so perfectly, I swung the axe. I swam with my arms. I hammered nails, though crookedly. Timber was my sacrum. Timber were my metatarsals. Timber was my lungs' pink flesh. Timber was my skull. I was a blueprint. Blue on blue, mapless, but for those warm bones and my red heart barking. And when I turned, without making my skirt a basket, when I turned from all the fallen pears, the sky was full of shaking, wet with river water. It wasn't rain that fell. Whatever it was, I collected in the cups of my hands.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Russell and Sally and Adrian and all the other hands and muscle behind making this happen today. My first selection will be from a collection of poetry, 4 Centuries of African American Nature Poetry. This collection is edited by Camille Dungy. And the piece I'm reading is a piece of prose by author Ravi Howard. It's called We Are Not Strangers Here. A young black boy in Detroit, miles away from the nearest sea, dreamed of visiting underwater worlds. Without leaving the room, he recalled, I would visit worlds I could hardly fathom. When the young man reached adulthood, he sought out the natural world he had imagined as a child. The journey went beyond adventure and fantasy because of the historical connection he found under the sea. He and a group of black scuba divers began to explore the wreckage of the slave ship Henrietta Marie. Exploring the sunken slaver was a bittersweet voyage, but also a study in connectedness. The diver and journalist Michael Cotman shared the story of his connection to the natural world in his memoir, Spirit Dive. A Detroit living room was miles away from the seas, their beauty and their tragedy. But the waters had been with him all along. He was not a stranger. His journey and his words tell us that we are not foreigners in the natural world. I was drawn to Cotman's experience because it seems that many of us are spirit divers. We have immersed ourselves not just in the American outdoors, but we have also explored the emotional depths of the historical moments within nature. Waves of paradise waters carried slave ships. In southern woodlands grew both emancipation oaks and hanging trees. Could some have been both? Can we ever know? Along with the rice, tobacco, and cotton, the enslaved grew okra and yams, pieces of home for many transplanted Africans. The connections to nature, those that haunt and those that nurture, have been with us all along. At some point, the terms urban and black became interchangeable. Some terminology would have us believe that our history began in cities and that we are a people of concrete and brick, far removed from the oaks, rivers, and low country. But the black poets on these pages have illuminated the connections and their meanings across the generations. Perhaps the affinity for nature was one of the few things the enslaved could carry with them, the contraband of the contraband. Although slaves were forced to become fixtures in the fields of the man-made American landscape, they were still patrons of the nature-made America. Old-growth woods, littorals, and savannas. Like the spirit divers, black poets have long immersed themselves in the moments of nature and then rendered those scenes on the page. The ebbs and flow of nature seem to guide the lines. There is a gentle flow of the wind and sea, but there are also other currents, historical and political, that are translated into language. These words have helped to bridge the distance between an urbanized view of blackness and the natural world, a gap that, left unchecked, leaves more room for distortions. In his narrative, Cotman wrote of visiting the slave fortress on Goree Island. He described an encounter with an American oilman staying at his hotel. The oilman felt it necessary to tell Cotman that Africans sold their own. "You all did it to yourselves too, you know," said the oilman to the diver, as if Europeans and Africans were somehow equal partners in the slave trade. Thankfully, the spirit diver had already reclaimed his bridge to the natural world. He had explored waters and seen the shackles eaten away by the salt. He let nature tell its own truth. And perhaps he understood that we must be present to hear it. If we are absent, then history will be written by the oilmen of the world, cultural mercantilists who extract resources and truths and rearrange them for their own purposes. What they extract is gone forever, leaving the landscape permanently altered. As the poet explores nature, the extraction is much different. The takeaway is experiential, leaving the natural place intact for others who will come after. Instead of editing nature and the history therein, poets modify and rearrange nature on the page. This collection has gathered voices to present landscapes on the page. The very word anthology is rooted in nature. Bouquet, garland, a harvest of language and imagery. A young boy sat in a room and ventured to worlds unknown. As an adult, he affirmed that connection, and he spread it across his pages so it can be shared. The poems found herein reflect the ebbs, flows, and cycles of nature. They reflect a Black experience no longer extracted or eroded, but renewed.
Here's one of those observational Black poems. Diamondback. Like an organ, coiled, deep inside or a lasso of a lightning and high noon, the rattlesnake traveled the length of my spine, sunning itself inside me. Then death, some call it God, drew a diamond on the snake's back and marked my chest with feeling. How godly the two of us were, shaking what was hollow. Dirt stained the front of my blouse. I felt venom rise in my ears. I rubbed myself against a rock, turning my skin bronze and flawless. This is how I became a woman. Sun slithering across my back, dust glittering my tongue, the snake's tail whirring.
The first selection of two I'll be reading, When Women Were Birds by Terry Tempest Williams. Changing woman was impregnated by the sun and gave birth to the twins, monster slayer and child of the water. In the Navajo pantheon, this is the holy family I met when I traveled to the Four Corners in the American Southwest. Geology became genealogy. Lava fields became the congealed blood of demons who died on these battlefields, brought down by monster slayer to save the people. Shiprock became winged rock, much more than a remnant plug of a volcano. The morphology of plants, animals, rocks, and rivers is not answered simply by science, but constitutes and contributes to the cosmology of the people who inhabit a place. And it is spiritual. Earth, mother, goddess. In every culture, the voice of the feminine emerges from the land itself. We clothe her as Eve or Isis or Demeter. In the desert, she appears as changing woman. She can shift shapes like the wind and cut through stone with her voice like water. And when she approaches us with her hands open, carrying offerings of white shells in arid country, she reminds us that there was a time before drought when ancient seas covered the desert. She is not to be classified. She is not to be controlled. She is the one who gathers seeds and plants them in the sand as dreams and calls forth rain. She is the one who embodies the moon, honoring the cyclic nature of life. And it is changing woman who is honored in the ceremony of first blood. Kina Alda is her ritual, initiating each Navajo girl into womanhood. I wish someone had told me when I was young that it was not happiness I could count on, but change. The Dine mentored me in story. When I saw a coiled basket in the desert, it uncoiled like a snake. When I found a flicker feather caught between the fingers of sage, its burned red shaft spoke to the bravery of this bird who flew directly toward the sun to retrieve fire for the people. And when I saw mountain lion move across the red rock cliffs like melted butter, it was not a catamount, but powerful medicine that asked for the sprinkling of corn pollen on the place where one is graced by presence. The question, what stories do we tell that evoke a sense of place, became my obsession. Through the generosity of the Dine, I heard how voice finds its greatest amplification through story. For many years, I wandered through the desert in search of a narrative that was not mine. I did not feel I belonged here. I was borrowing a landscape until I found my own. But when I stopped searching and settled into the erosional peace of the Red Rock Desert, I found myself quietly held by an immensity I could not name. I took off my clothes, and I lay on my back in a dry arroyo and allowed the heat absorbed into the pink sand to enter every cell into my body. I closed my eyes and became simply another breathing presence on the planet. And the final piece is from a book called Conversations with Birds by Priyanka Kumar. Birds are my almanac. They tune me into the seasons and to myself. The western tanager, Piranga ludoviciana, with its flaming yellow-orange plumage, and the yellow-breasted chat, Icteria virinus, glistening with a mango sheen midsummer. When a juniper tree sparks to life with the Wilson's warbler, Cardellina pusillea, its beady black eyes prominent in a bright yellow and olive body, I know that the aspens in nearby Santa Fe National Forest will soon turn to gold. In midwinter, I will see dark-eyed juncos, Junco hymalis, whose folk name is snowbird, pecking on the clay snow-plastered dirt. When specks of green mysteriously rise from the earth, and a little ruby-crowned kinglet, Corthelio calendula, with baby big eyes hops in a pinyon pine, it will be time to celebrate spring. When I was a small child, I lived for nearly a decade in remote mountainous areas of northern India, and almost all the worthwhile moments of my childhood were spent immersed in nature. Back then, I didn't pay any special attention to birds. I merely looked out for snakes. I was in awe of what we called leaf snakes, such as the green vine snake, Ahetula nasuta, and the shimmering skins that many kinds of venomous snakes shed in my garden formed my greatest treasure. It wasn't until I moved to the West as a teenager that I found my life increasingly shorn from nature. So many of us are experiencing this disconnect today, and our inability to see or fully experience the natural world has played a part in making our Earth a sad and vulnerable planet, where warming temperatures are reducing the breeding success of birds, and habitat loss has caused sublime species, such as the ivory-billed woodpecker, to become extinct. In my 20s, I started to mull over the deep connection I'd had with nature as a child. After a debilitating experience in a Northern Californian forest nudged me to take a closer look at birds, I realized that I had been hiking extensively through California, but not seeing anything. In the years to come, I befriended a string of birds and began to understand why my life in the West was lacking rasa, which in Sanskrit means juice, literally and metaphorically. Gradually, the town or city became a place to move through to get to the forest, which was a radiant sanctuary, a place to discover birds, their calls and their dances, and to comprehend why their numbers were declining. Some of these birds became such fixtures in my life that the time I spent observing them over 2 decades charts my metamorphosis into a naturalist. As I share in these pages, loving these winged marvels has been my portal into the natural world. I recently led a group of school children into a New Mexico forest for a day-long excursion. In the morning, the children were introduced to a swain-song hawk, Buteo swansoni, one of the largest migrating raptors we get in these parts, and a burrowing owl, a leggy ground-dwelling bird who emits a rattlesnake rasp to scare off predators. Then we hiked on uphill until we reached a magnificent waterfall. The hawk and the owl had made a deep impression on the children, and still recalling these fierce birds, they raced to the water, gushing past black basalt, and began scaling the cliff face like mountain goats. It looked as though they were embracing the landscape. I stood there, mesmerized. I recognized the embrace, for nature also offered it to me as a child. A woman who was assisting me pointed out that a child might lose their footing and suffer a fall. I then called out, asking them not to climb any higher and to come back. But the children clung to the basalt rock face for a long while, the sun-inflected water haloing them, before they reluctantly scrambled down. The experience of watching these children at home in nature crystallized my belief that seeds of transformation lie dormant in all of our hearts. Sometimes it just takes the right bird to awaken us.
One last kind of awakening. Primordial mirror. I was newly naked, aware of myself as a separate self, distinct from dirt and bone. I had not hands enough, and so finally uncrossed my arms. In trying to examine one body part, I'd lose sight of another. I couldn't imagine what I looked like during the fractured angles of sex. At the river's edge, it was impossible to see all of myself at once. I began to understand nakedness as a feeling. It was a snake, loose and green. It was the snake's skin, coiled and discarded. The shedding chained itself like a balloon ribboned to a child's wrists. Morning's birdsong reminded me of the sloughing off of skin. The rumored beauty of my husband's first wife never bothered me before. I missed the sensation of being fixed in amber. Then the hair in the comb, fingernail clippings, the red mole on my left breast grown suddenly bigger. I perceived my likeness in everything. The lines on my palm as the veins of a leaf. My mind as a swarm of flies humming over something sugary or dead. My vulnerability as the buck I'd kill, then wrap myself inside. My hair as switchgrass, twine, and nest. A roving cloud, my every limb.
When the spirits dance, the water sings. We are in tune. We are free. Spirit is too ancient. Spirit is too ancient. We spirit too ancient.
Mother is Latin, truth and justice, the Sibyls. We're carved into the sky, born into Brazil, marched into the land of old men. We are layers of separate.
When the spirits dance, the wind hums tunes of liberation. We are subservient to no state, a foreigner everywhere. Free. When the spirits dance,
conscientiously work on building a complex lead to salvage humanity. To salvage humanity.
All I want to say is this on? Is it on? Yes. All I want to say is thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for everyone who participated. Che, Adama, Maya, thank you. And I hope the rest of your weekend is beautiful.